Jimmy Butler wants out in Miami. We know this. We also know that if he's going to get traded, it will likely happen soon. Butler's been suspended for 7 games by the Heat, and reportedly, that is the timeline in which they're going to try and work out a trade. But the more this situation drags on, the more that Jimmy Butler is losing. When he officially requested a trade, he initially said that he would go anywhere. He just wanted out of Miami. Ideally, he would want to go somewhere where he could win a title, but he just wanted to find his joy again in basketball. But it's becoming clear that that's not actually the case at all. The initial list was reportedly some combination of the Warriors, Mavs, Suns, and then some other speculated destinations like Milwaukee, Memphis, Sacramento, and Houston. But that's now basically become a one-team list, which has caused Butler to lose all of his leverage. The Warriors haven't really been in these reports at all, which has been strange. They're clearly struggling. Their front office continues to talk about how they need to add more pieces. They don't want to just give up on the season with Steph at the point that he is in his career. Things are really, really down in Golden State, and I would have assumed that there would be a trade package there they could work out that they would like in exchange for Butler just to shake up the roster. They added Dennis Schroeder, but right now, Golden State does not seem to be a real Jimmy Butler destination for a lot of the reasons that we've talked about in other videos. They'd have to give up multiple pieces on the roster. Andrew Wiggins would almost 100% have to be in the deal to make the money work. It's just not a realistic option for them. And again, they haven't really been in these reports. The Mavs are another team that never really made sense in the first place. They're missing a bunch of guys right now, including Luka and Kyrie, so it's not really the right time to make a trade. And they don't seem interested in trading either Klay Thompson or PJ Washington, one of which would have to be involved in the deal to make the money work. Then the other teams, the speculated teams, have basically been shut down by Butler's agent. Milwaukee was a team that apparently was gaining momentum over the last couple of days to try and get under the second apron by trading away guys like Pat Connaughton and Chris Middleton, and then going out and trading for Butler once they're under the second apron. That's basically been shut down. He's basically told them he doesn't want to go to Milwaukee. Memphis is another team that you guys have talked about a ton in the comments. I've seen a ton on Twitter. They seem to have gained a lot of steam. I still think they're in the race a little bit, but it seems like, just like with Milwaukee, Butler has gone to them and said, this is not a team I want to go to. And when he says that, he has every right to, because he has a player option this offseason. That's one of the reasons why the situation has been accelerated in the first place. Jimmy Butler can just walk. So if you're not willing to give him an extension that's worth the amount that he wants, or if he's not willing to re-sign with your team in general, he can technically pick and choose his destination, assuming he eventually gets traded. And like I said, Memphis seems to not be on that list. Sacramento, all that stuff has cooled down a little bit as well now that they've got a new head coach in Doug Christie and they've been playing better. And the Rockets seem to be totally fine with their team. They don't feel like this is their moment to make an all-in move, and or they don't think Butler is the guy to make that move with, which of course leaves us with the team that has been speculated from start to finish. And it's been speculated on and reported on so much to the point that this has to have been Jimmy Butler's endgame destination the entire time. Now it all makes sense why Shams was so adamant that Phoenix would be involved, why his agent was so adamant that it wasn't just Phoenix because he didn't want to lose the leverage. Everything about this situation is pointed to the Suns, even when it hasn't made any sense at all. And I think it's clear that that is Jimmy Butler's not just preferred destination. At this point, it seems like it is his only destination. But that is not a good situation to be in if you are Jimmy Butler, which is likely why his agent was trying to make it seem like that wasn't his only destination when Shams was making it seem like it was. Here's the situation in Phoenix. Bradley Beal has to be in the trade. He has to be traded to Miami or another team. There is no other way that Phoenix can put together salaries and add Jimmy Butler to their team. It is just not financially possible. The problem with that is that Bradley Beal cannot be traded from Phoenix unless he wants to. He holds a no trade clause. Him and LeBron are the only two guys in the entire league that have a no trade clause. Now, we've talked about this before, but his agent, Bradley Beal's agent, has come out and said he is not waiving his no trade clause. That is not part of the plan right now. Bradley Beal wants to stay in Phoenix, wants to help turn things around despite a team that is clearly falling apart and just nothing is going right in Phoenix. Him and Yusuf Nurkic have since been moved to the bench. Coming off the bench, Bradley Beal's not happy with it. It seems like that was a tactic by Phoenix to try and get him to waive his no trade clause anyway, which makes me think that maybe there was a structure where Beal could go to another team and then Miami would send Jimmy Butler to Phoenix and then some assets would be exchanged. If they're actively trying to basically sabotage their team so that Bradley Beal would waive his no trade clause, it seems like the Butler thing was actually a real possibility. But as I said, Beal's agent has come out and said plainly and publicly he is not waiving his no trade clause. And if he doesn't want to leave Phoenix, he doesn't have to. And I think the reason why he's so adamant about not waiving his no trade clause isn't necessarily that he wants to stay in Phoenix. Obviously, that situation is falling apart. he's not going to end up in Miami. I think if there was a scenario here where Bradley Beal could end up with the Miami Heat and be, a higher level scoring option there than he is right now in Phoenix, I think that's a situation that would be intriguing to him. That seemed to be on his list of possible destinations prior to this whole situation with Jimmy Butler, when it seemed like Jimmy Butler was going to be there long term and Beal was still in Washington before Phoenix traded for him. That seemed like a realistic option for Beal. So if he could waive his no trade clause and go to Miami, I think this would be much easier. The problem is Beal has like 4 years and a bunch of money left on his contract, one of the worst contracts in sports, and Miami doesn't want that money. If Beal was on a 1-year deal, I think this is super easy. He waives his no trade clause, they switch back and forth, and some assets go to Miami, and then Beal probably just walks in the offseason. Anyway, the fact that he's on this massive long-term contract and the no trade clause transfers to Miami, so now Beal is their problem if it ends up not working out, that is the thing that is holding this entire situation up. Which means you would have to find a third team. There have been a lot of speculated destinations. Somehow Milwaukee has come up. Detroit has been one that has been thrown around a bunch now that they don't have Jaden Ivey as this is a team that would make sense trying to push for the playoff situation. Let's add Beal alongside Cade Cunningham. I hate that idea for Detroit, but it is one that has been thrown out there because they have some contracts they can put together to make it work, and then Butler can go to Phoenix and you can throw some assets to a couple of these different teams. Yeah, there's kind of a structure there, but again, Bradley Beal would have to look at the situation and say, yeah, sure, I'd rather go from Phoenix, the situation that Jimmy Butler is trying to get himself to, playing alongside Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, and actively choose to, no offense to the Pistons, go to Detroit and play there. I think that's very clearly not a situation Bradley Beal wants to be in. He'd prefer to be somewhere like Miami or stay in Phoenix, and until he waives his no trade clause, which his agent has publicly said he's not going to do, this is a non-starter. This will not happen in Phoenix. And having said all those things, if you go down the list and he's saying no to Memphis, he's saying no to Milwaukee, the Warriors aren't interested, the Rockets aren't interested, all these other teams are just like, nah, we're good, and it comes down to just Phoenix, and Bradley Beal has the ultimate no, I'm not being traded card in the no trade clause, this deal can't happen. You're out of teams if you're Jimmy Butler. You have lost all leverage, you've lost all negotiating power, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Obviously, this is a complicated deal. He makes so much money, it's hard to find a team. Here's, I think, the real situation, though. I don't think teams are all that interested in paying Jimmy Butler what he wants to be paid. And that is probably one of the biggest frustrations for him right now, is that Miami didn't want to give him the extension in the offseason. And now he's had to force himself in a situation where he's making himself a problem in Miami to try and get out. Now these other teams are seeing that and they're saying, okay, why would we want to invite a 35, 36-year-old problem into our locker room and then also have to pay him $50+ million over the next couple of seasons? Jimmy can just opt in to his player option next year, make 55+ and be in the exact same situation that he's in with Miami right now. And so if that doesn't happen, if no one wants to pay him, maybe he'll just do that. But if no teams out there are overly interested in trading for Butler, whether it be because they don't want to give up a ton of assets in general, or because they don't want to give up a ton of assets in exchange for a guy that might walk, or because they don't want to give up a ton of assets for a guy they'd have to pay a bunch of money to, if there's not real legitimate interest in extending Jimmy Butler, it's going to be extremely difficult to find other teams, because then Phoenix doesn't feel like they have to up their offer at all. They can't trade for him in the first place if Beal doesn't waive his no trade clause, and you end up in a situation where nobody wants Jimmy Butler. Now, all of this is reported and doesn't mean it's 100% true, but if this is where things stand, and I think that's where things stand, Jimmy Butler's not going to get traded. The 7-game suspension is going to be over. He's still going to be a member of the Heat, and he's either going to just be sent home and not really play. Maybe they can figure something out closer to the trade deadline here in about a month, or he's just not really going to be a part of the team. They're going to get to the offseason. He's either going to opt in or opt out. If he opts out, maybe he has a team out there that is willing to pay him a bunch of money in free agency. Seems unlikely. Or he opts in and we do this all over again in the offseason when maybe things change for Beal and Phoenix, when maybe some of these other teams see a better option once they have Jimmy Butler for an entire year rather than trading for him midseason. Something has to change if Jimmy Butler is actually going to get traded, because right now it is a one-team list, and that one team can't do anything unless Bradley Beal waives his no trade clause.